The Komodo dragon is the kind of animal that makes you double-check whether Jurassic Park was actually a documentary. Picture a lizard the size of a small car, covered in scales, with a tongue flicking in and out like it's testing the air for its next victim. It looks prehistoric because, well, it kind of is. And here's the kicker. Despite living alongside us in the modern world, we still don't fully understand how it works. Is it a venomous predator? A bacterial assassin with a septic mouth? Or just a giant lizard that wins fights because it's too stubborn to die? Scientists have been arguing about this thing for decades, and the Komodo just keeps lumbering around Indonesia like it couldn't care less. It's basically the apex predator that biology textbooks can't decide how to label. So yeah, while lions roar and sharks have movies made about them, the Komodo dragon just silently strolls up, takes down a deer twice its size, and leaves researchers scratching their heads. If you've ever looked at a Komodo dragon in person, your brain probably goes, "Oh, that's neat. Wait, is it supposed to be that big?" Because this thing isn't your average backyard lizard. We're talking about an animal that can stretch nearly 10 feet long, weigh more than 150 pounds, and look like it crawled straight out of a deleted scene from Walking with Dinosaurs. Imagine a monitor lizard that decided the gym wasn't enough, so it bulked up, got mean, and then moved to an island where it could boss everyone else around. That's the Komodo dragon in a nutshell. Their bodies are low-slung and heavy, built like reptilian tanks. The scales, thick and armored, like medieval chainmail. Their legs, stocky but surprisingly powerful, with claws that look like they belong on a velociraptor rather than a modern lizard. And then there's the head, flat, wide, with that unnerving habit of slowly flicking a forked tongue in and out, tasting the air like it's browsing the menu before lunch. You don't need to see one hunting to get chills, just watching it walk is enough. It's the kind of unsettling, deliberate stride that screams, "I don't need to run fast, you'll slow down eventually." And here's the thing, Komodo dragons aren't cheetahs. They can't sprint at highway speeds, but when they want to move, they can hit around 12 miles per hour. Now, 12 doesn't sound terrifying until you remember they're roughly the size of a dirt bike and armed with a mouthful of serrated steak knives. Imagine trying to outjog a sofa that suddenly decided to chase you. Not ideal. Their feeding style adds to the nightmare fuel. Komodos are not picky eaters. They'll chow down on deer, pigs, water buffalo, carrion, and occasionally each other. Yes, they are cannibals. So if you're a smaller Komodo, congratulations. You're on the menu too. When they hunt, they're ambush predators. A dragon will lie in wait along a game trail, blending in with the scrubby bushes, and when some unlucky deer strolls past, it lunges forward with a strike so sudden it's like watching an alligator with better land mobility. The bite isn't usually fatal right away, but it sets off a chain reaction that almost always ends with the Komodo dragging the carcass into the brush while its victim bleeds out. And just for the record, these guys can eat up to 80% of their body weight in a single meal. That's like you sitting down and finishing off your own refrigerator in one go. They'll rip into a carcass, swallow huge chunks of meat whole, and leave nothing behind but bones and a very messy crime scene. The smell of carrion? That's basically a dinner bell for them. What makes the Komodo dragon even creepier is how ancient it feels. You watch one and you can't shake the sense that you're looking at a leftover prototype from the Mesozoic era. Its closest cousins, other monitor lizards, are impressive, sure, but they don't radiate the same "I belong in a dinosaur documentary" energy. Komodos feel out of time. They've got the same cold, unblinking stare you'd expect from something that saw the continents drift apart and decided, I'll stay right here. So when you stand face to face with one on an Indonesian island, you're not just meeting a big reptile. You're meeting an animal that blurs the line between modern predator and prehistoric throwback. It's a walking contradiction. Too slow to chase, too dangerous to ignore, and too mysterious for scientists to fully pin down. Basically, it's the nightmare lizard that proves you don't need claws the size of a T-Rex to be absolutely terrifying. Here's the frustrating thing about Komodo dragons. We don't actually know where they came from. Sure, we know they exist now, and we know they've been terrifying goats, deer, and the occasional tourist on Indonesian islands for centuries, but their origin story? That's still one of paleontology's bigger headaches. For starters, the fossil record of Komodo dragons is basically patchy, which is a polite way of saying it's terrible. We've got bones of giant monitor lizards scattered across Asia and Australia, and we can trace the dragon's closest relatives through the Varanus family tree. But if you're looking for a clear timeline, like they evolved here, walked there, and ended up on these islands, good luck. It's as if the fossils just shrugged and decided to ghost us. One of the leading theories is that Komodo dragons are the downsized cousins of Megalania, Varanus priscus, a true giant from Pleistocene Australia. Megalania was a lizard that could reach over 20 feet in length, weighing maybe a ton. Picture a Komodo dragon, but on the kind of steroids that get you banned from professional sports. Some paleontologists argue that Komodos are simply the smaller survivors of this once gargantuan bloodline, making them the scrappy heirs of Australia's reptilian royalty. But here's the plot twist. Komodo dragon fossils actually pop up in places like Flores, Java, and even India, dating back more than 1 million years. That suggests they weren't just Megalania juniors that hopped over from Australia. Instead, they may have evolved in Asia and spread into the Indonesian islands long before humans ever showed up. In other words, they're not just leftovers from Megalania, they might be their own distinct evolutionary experiment that happened to stick around. So, which story is true? Were they giants that shrank to fit island life? Or were they always medium-sized monsters that just got really comfortable ruling volcanic archipelagos? Honestly, paleontologists still don't have a consensus, and Komodo dragons are not helping, because, unlike polite fossils that sit in rock layers for millions of years, these guys are alive and wandering around, making it harder to imagine them as anything other than the apex predators they already are. What we do know is that wherever they came from, they managed to survive the Pleistocene extinction events that wiped out most of the other megafauna. Think about that. Giant kangaroos, saber-toothed cats, mastodons, gone. But somehow this 10-foot lizard just shrugged and said, "Yeah, I'll keep doing my thing." And now it's stuck on a few islands like Komodo, Flores, Rinca, and Gili Motang, basically reptile retirement homes surrounded by tourists with cameras. This isolation adds to the mystery. Why here, of all places? If you were a giant lizard looking for prime real estate, you'd probably pick a continent with endless prey, not a handful of rocky islands. Yet Komodos not only survived, they thrived. That makes them a living paradox, a predator that should have gone extinct long ago, yet somehow found a loophole in the evolutionary game. So while the Komodo dragon casually lounges in the sun, flicking its tongue like it owns the place, paleontologists are left scratching their heads, arguing over whether it's the last relic of a prehistoric giant or just a weird island experiment that hit the jackpot. Either way, the origin story of the Komodo dragon isn't solved. It's a cliffhanger. And honestly, that makes it even scarier. Because nothing says apex predator like an animal whose backstory is still an unsolved mystery. Okay, here's where the Komodo dragon gets really weird. Because you'd think after decades of watching them kill stuff, scientists would have figured out exactly how they do it. But nope, this giant lizard has managed to keep its murder methods mysterious. For a long time, the reigning theory was, Komodo dragons don't kill you right away, they just infect you. Their mouths were thought to be basically petri dishes of doom. Early researchers noticed that prey bitten by Komodos often escaped, only to die days later from massive infections. The conclusion? The Komodo dragon weaponizes bacteria. Easy explanation, neat and tidy. Except not really. See, that theory doesn't hold up so well under scrutiny. When scientists actually swabbed Komodo dragon mouths, they found bacteria, sure, but not the kind of overwhelming toxic soup you'd expect from a biological weapon. It turns out their dental hygiene isn't that much worse than, say, a stray dog's. Gross, yes. Lethal biohazard, not so much. Enter theory number 2, Venom. Around 2009, researchers discovered that Komodos actually have venom glands in their lower jaws. These glands produce a cocktail of proteins, including anticoagulants that stop blood from clotting and compounds that lower blood pressure and cause shock. In other words, when a Komodo bites, it's not just a nasty flesh wound, it's like getting injected with a slow-motion bleeding disorder. That deer doesn't just limp away from a toothy scrape, it staggers, collapses, and eventually becomes lunch. Now, this is where things get fun. Some scientists still argue over how much the venom actually matters compared to sheer mechanical trauma. Because Komodo dragons don't exactly nibble politely. Their teeth are serrated and curved, built to slice like steak knives. A single bite can open up deep gashes, tear through muscle, and leave prey bleeding buckets. Combine that with venom that stops the bleeding from clotting, and congratulations, you've just met the reptile version of a crime syndicate hitman. And if you're wondering how this plays out in the wild, picture this. A Komodo latches onto the leg of a deer. The deer panics, bolts, and manages to escape, dragging itself into the brush. The Komodo? It doesn't chase at full speed. It just follows, slowly, patiently, flicking its tongue, tracking the scent of blood like a reptilian grim reaper. Hours later, sometimes even the next day, the dragon strolls up to a half-dead, collapsed animal. Game over. This hunting style is both efficient and horrifying. It's not about the chase, it's about inevitability. Imagine being pursued by something that doesn't even need to run, because it knows you'll collapse eventually. That's worse than speed. That's patience as a weapon. Of course, Komodo dragons aren't picky about tactics. Sometimes they go full brute force, ambushing prey with a tackle and mauling it until it's down. Other times it's more of a bite-and-wait strategy, and then there's scavenging, because if something's already dead, why waste the effort? A Komodo will happily crash a water buffalo funeral like the world's rudest dinner guest. So is it bacteria, venom, or just the fact that being bitten by a 150-pound lizard is already a bad day? The answer is probably all of the above. The Komodo dragon isn't a specialist, it's an overachiever. Its bite is a Swiss Army knife of pain, mechanical damage, blood loss, venom, and opportunistic infection all rolled into one. And the deer? Well, let's just say it never stood a chance. Here's the thing about Komodo dragons. For all their reputation as apex predators, they're not exactly the poster children of high-energy hunting. They don't sprint across the savannah like cheetahs. They don't wrestle prey to the ground in packs like wolves, and they definitely don't leap dramatically out of the water like great white sharks. No, Komodos prefer a different style, the wait until you make a mistake and then casually ruin your day method. Most of the time, Komodos hunt by ambush. They'll waddle their bulky bodies into position along a well-used animal path, lie flat, and wait. Hours can go by. Then, boom. When a deer, pig, or unlucky water buffalo wanders by, the dragon lunges with shocking speed for such a heavy reptile, latches on with its serrated teeth, and lets time do the rest. If the prey escapes, fine, that's part of the plan. The dragon just tracks it at a walking pace, confident it'll eventually collapse from blood loss or venom effects. Honestly, it's less predator and more reptilian debt collector. But here's where the debate starts. Is this really the behavior of an apex predator, or is the Komodo dragon kind of lazy? Unlike lions or orcas, which actively chase and overpower their prey, Komodos seem to rely on patience and opportunism. They'll also scavenge whenever possible. If there's already a carcass lying around, they don't ask questions. They just show up, tear into it, and eat like it's a buffet. Apex predator vibes, sure, but also kind of freeloading. What muddies the water further is how Komodos behave when there's more than one at a kill. Some researchers suggest they might display a form of cooperative hunting. You'll sometimes see multiple Komodos target the same prey animal, harassing it from different angles until it's overwhelmed. But here's the catch. Calling that cooperation might be giving them too much credit. It's just as likely they're all independently attacking the same victim because, hey, free meat. Once the prey goes down, it's a full-on feeding frenzy, with dragons shoving and biting each other like kids fighting over the last slice of pizza. So, teamwork? Maybe. Social order? Definitely not. Still, lazy or not, Komodo dragons absolutely dominate their ecosystem. On islands like Komodo and Rinca, they're the undisputed top predators. Deer, pigs, goats, and even horses introduced by humans all fall victim. And because they'll eat carrion too, they double as nature's cleanup crew. Think of them as the HOA of the island's food web. Nobody asked for their authority, but everyone knows better than to challenge it. What's interesting is how their predatory role compares to other apex animals. Lions hunt in groups, wolves coordinate, sharks go solo but at lightning speed. Komodos? They're somewhere in between, capable of both ambush kills and scavenging, with just enough venom to guarantee results. They're less about flashy takedowns and more about inevitability. If a Komodo dragon sets its sights on you, the odds aren't in your favor. So, apex predator or lazy opportunist? The answer is both. The Komodo dragon proves that you don't need teamwork, endurance, or fancy hunting strategies to sit at the top of the food chain. Sometimes all it takes is patience, a set of steak knife teeth, and the confidence to stroll after your prey knowing you'll get it eventually. Because really, nothing says apex like a predator is so effective it doesn't even need to hurry. For most animals, humans are the ultimate nightmare. We invent traps, weapons, and Netflix documentaries about how clever we are. But for Komodo dragons, humans are just another animal on the island buffet, and the locals of Komodo and Rinca have known this for centuries. In Indonesian folklore, the Komodo dragon isn't just a lizard, it's a creature with almost mystical significance. Some islanders believed they were related to humans, part of a shared ancestry, and should be respected rather than feared. Which makes sense, because respecting something that can bite you in half is a pretty solid survival strategy. Stories of dragons protecting villages or symbolizing strength were passed down for generations, but then explorers, scientists, and tourists showed up and said, "Wow, look at that giant murder lizard. Let's poke it with a stick." And yeah, humans learned the hard way that Komodo dragons are not to be underestimated. Documented attacks are rare but brutal. Imagine a 150-pound reptile that can sprint short distances faster than you can react, launching itself at your legs with teeth designed to slice flesh like butter. Villagers, park rangers, and even tourists have been mauled, with injuries ranging from shredded calves to fatalities. One of the most chilling details? A Komodo attack doesn't have to kill you instantly. That bite, whether through venom, trauma, or both, turns into a ticking clock. Unless medical help is quick, survival isn't guaranteed. Tourists in particular often misjudge these dragons. They see them lounging under trees, sunbathing like oversized iguanas, and think, "Oh, how cute, let's take a selfie." Big mistake. Because that lazy dragon can explode into action when provoked, and suddenly you're starring in your own episode of When Reptiles Attack. Even researchers who spend their careers around these lizards treat them with a mix of fascination and healthy fear. No one forgets that they're essentially studying a prehistoric predator with zero respect for human personal space. Despite the danger, Komodo dragons are also a point of national pride in Indonesia. They're a major draw for ecotourism, bringing visitors from around the world to Komodo National Park. Park rangers guide groups of tourists through the islands armed with nothing but long sticks, basically giant forks, to gently push dragons away if they get too curious. Yes, you heard that right. Sticks. Against 10-foot venomous lizards. Not exactly reassuring. Still, the dragons are protected as a national treasure. Killing them is illegal, and conservation programs are in place to preserve their populations, which hover at only a few thousand individuals. The paradox is striking. Humans fear Komodo dragons, yet also rely on them as cultural icons and economic boosters. The relationship is complicated, part predator-prey, part guardian ward. But here's the sobering truth. Encounters can and do go wrong. Every so often, a villager is attacked while farming or a tourist strays too close. The dragons don't care who you are. To them, you're just meat that walks upright. And while many attacks are survivable with quick medical care, some end fatally. The Komodo dragon doesn't distinguish between deer, goats, or humans. It just does what it's been doing for millions of years. So yeah, folklore paints them as mystical relatives. Conservationists call them national treasures. Tourists call them Instagram gold. But when push comes to shove, the Komodo dragon is still what it has always been. A dangerous, unpredictable predator that reminds humans we're not as invincible as we like to think. Bad day to be a goat. Worst day to be a careless tourist. Here's the wild part. Even after decades of study, fieldwork, and plenty of nervous encounters, scientists still don't fully understand the Komodo dragon. You'd think that with the thing being alive right now, not buried in a fossil bed somewhere, we'd have all the answers. But no, the dragon is still holding on to some of its secrets, and it's not exactly volunteering any explanations. First big question, where exactly did they come from? We've talked about the debate, Australia's giant megalania cousin versus Asian island origins, but the fossil trail is a mess. Komodo fossils are scattered across places like Flores, Timor, and India, dating back over 1 million years. Some paleontologists argue they evolved in Australia and shrank down when they got stuck on islands. Others say they came out of Asia, then colonized the islands much later. Either way, the evolutionary family tree is less of a clean diagram and more of a scribble with question marks. And until we find more fossils, the dragon's origin story stays a cliffhanger. Then there's the eternal, how do they kill debate. Is venom the main weapon? Or is it mostly about the physical trauma of a bite? Sure, we've identified venom glands in their jaws, and we know those proteins cause blood pressure crashes and prevent clotting. But in real-world kills, the sheer ripping force of their teeth may be just as important. The bacteria theory has been mostly debunked, but infections still play a role. Bottom line, it's a murder buffet, and scientists still can't decide which ingredient is doing the most damage. Another mystery? Their social life, or lack of one. Do Komodo dragons hunt together? Or are they just a bunch of antisocial lizards that happen to be attacking the same target? When multiple dragons take down a deer, it looks coordinated, but many experts suspect it's nothing more than coincidence, like a chaotic rush-hour crowd all cramming onto the same bus. The truth is, we don't really know how much, if any, cooperation is going on. And then there's the strangest question of all. How have they managed to survive at all? Think about it. Massive predators usually struggle to hang on when ecosystems change. Yet here's the Komodo dragon, clinging to a few volcanic islands, eating whatever it can find, and refusing to go extinct. Did its size, patience, and island isolation give it an evolutionary edge? Or is it just dumb luck that humans haven't wiped it out yet? Hard to say. So yeah, the Komodo dragon is both familiar and baffling. We can watch it stalk prey today, see it in zoos, and read all the scientific papers about it. But there are still unanswered questions. Its true origins, the exact mechanics of its killing bite, and the way it fits into the evolutionary puzzle. It's a predator that feels prehistoric because in many ways it is. A living relic that reminds us how little we actually know about the creatures we share this planet with. One thing's certain, until we solve these mysteries, the Komodo dragon keeps its title as the apex predator we still don't understand. Yeah, that happened.